All right, let's go ahead and get started. Everybody, welcome to our webinar From Paper to Precision, Streamlining Payments with VendorPay. My name is Brad Aching. I'm a manager here at Product Management here at CINC, and I'm joined by Jarrett Tran, who is a Senior Account Executive at AvidXchange, and Todd Ward, who is a Product Owner on the CINC side as well. So what we really want to talk to you today is something that we're excited about. We want to kind of guide you through how organizations can transform their accounts payable process from like a cumbersome paper-based solution into a streamlined, efficient, and profitable operation. So in today's landscape, optimizing every aspect of your business is crucial. And manual AP processes are a major bottleneck. They cost time, they cost money, and they even risk your financial security and vendor relationships. So today we're going to kind of explore those challenges, and we're going to introduce you to a very powerful solution that solves this for you. And that solution is CINC VendorPay, which is powered by AvidXchange. All right.
So the hidden costs and risks of traditional payments. Let's start by acknowledging the pain points many of you are likely experiencing with traditional, manual, or even partially automated AP departments. Some of these friction points are they're time-consuming and inefficient. 55% of AP departments are still manual or partially automated. And for those, 46% of professionals say manual data entry is time consuming and prone to errors. This isn't just about data entry, it's about paper-based workflows, chasing approvals, and a lack of visibility into invoice status, duplicates, or approvals. Imagine the hours spent on these mundane tasks. Our customers tell us they spend 50% less time on AP after automating with CINC VendorPay. This time could be spent on more strategic initiatives. The next friction point is the high cost. It might surprise you at how much paper checks actually cost. Sources indicate the cost to issue a check ranges from $2 to $3 per check, and those fees add up quickly, not just in postage, but in labor. Fraud risk, such a major concern for community associations and anyone issuing checks these days. 76% of AP leaders have experienced payment-related fraud, particularly related to checks, as the largest share of financial loss. In fact, 66% of organizations report check fraud. This is a direct threat to your financial health. Lost or stolen checks pose a constant risk. Protecting your organization from fraud is paramount. The next is declining vendor relationships. Vendors want to get paid faster. However, manual processes often lead to payment delays, which strain supplier relationships. Add that to 43% increase in U.S. Postal Service mail delays between 2013 and 2018, and a 3.7% decrease in two-day United States Postal Service performance. I'm sure I'm not telling you something you don't already know related to U.S. Postal Service, but it leads to manual follow-up on outstanding payments, which ends up creating more work for your team. Difficulty scaling. Finally, relying on manual processes makes it incredibly difficult to scale your operation efficiently. More work typically means more headcount, increasing the risk of errors and delays as your business grows. So let's talk about how CINC VendorPay works today. CINC VendorPay integrates seamlessly into the current CINC accounting system. Once you're onboarded, once your bank accounts are onboarded to CINC VendorPay, you'll see a new option under the Pay By dropdown in the Assign Invoices screen. It's called CINC VendorPay. You would select that as the option to pay your invoices. Everything else about paying your invoices, your approvals, all stays the same. It's just when you're selecting VendorPay as the payment option. Did you know that you could set the default payment type for all or specific vendors? We recommend once you're onboarded to CINC VendorPay, that you select CINC VendorPay as the default payment type for all your invoices. You can then process the invoices normally as you would in CINC. And you can see a full status history in the invoices history screen. So as the invoices are paid, are sent to Avid, you can find out the current status at any given point in time. And more importantly, when the payment is picked up and paid, whether that be check or virtual credit card, you'll see proof of payment at that time. As it relates to invoice approval and vendor history, in CINC Web Access, you have the ability to approve invoices. We have a current bank account information, available balance that pulls directly from CINC accounting so that your board members can approve the invoices through their normal approval process. It's pulling the directories that you already have set up in CINC accounting for your board members to make that as seamless as possible. No extra setup in that regard. Additionally, in Web Access, we've added vendor payment history, so you can see all of the invoices that we paid, as well as the images after they have been paid. You can filter this by vendors, by dates, or by name, and it has a grid at the bottom. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jarrett to talk about the payments workflow after the payments leave CINC and go to Avid.
Sure, thanks, Todd. So, no, very easy for you all. And so again, you're going to select the Avid or the Sync Vendor Pay option, and it's going to transfer that information from your invoices that you've approved over to AvidXchange. Once we receive that data, can you click to the next? There you go. Yeah. So once we receive that data, the process will begin. And generally, so one of the things that people want to know is like, how quick is all this happening? So the first thing you should know is that if we receive final approval from Sync by 2 p.m. Eastern on a business day, I'm sorry, 3 p.m. Eastern on a business day, we will generate the payment that day and it goes out the following business day. And for mailing, we also include Saturday. So the process begins as soon as we get that data, and then it's going to go into our clearing account. So a little bit different than for those of you that have been on StrongRoom before or are still on it. We have traditionally cut checks off of the association's bank account. What happens here, and if you'll click to the next one for me, please, Juliana. We will put this money into the AvidXchange clearing account, and we issue all forms of payment from there. And what does that mean to you all? It actually means that this is going to add a layer of protection because as Todd was mentioning earlier, that check fraud is really, really just on the rise for community association management companies. And so what happens when we cut these checks off of the AvidXchange clearing account, it does not expose the association's bank account to check washing or check fraud of any sort. So, and if one is washed that we send out off of the clearing account that belongs to AvidXchange, it's our responsibility to go and chase that money. We just have to reissue a payment and then we move forward. So it doesn't become the management company's burden if that were to happen. But we do have plenty of controls in place to help prevent it, including positive pay. So if you'll click on the next one, please, Juliana, the first method that I want to talk about for payment is going to be check payment. And by default, all vendors are going to be paid by check if they've never been paid by Avid before. The vendor gets to choose how they want to be paid. And it's very important that you hear me say that vendors choose. You don't have to put them in one box or the other, and they're not forced to do one or the other by us. They choose how they want to be paid. And that's really important to hear because check payment is always free. And it also is going to work on that same timeline that we talked about. It goes, if we receive it today by 3 p.m., or it's going to go out tomorrow, as long as tomorrow's a business day, or Saturday. So the only thing that is going to delay that payment is going to be the mail once we generate. And that's the same as if you were to cut them in-house, like you're probably doing today. The next form of payment is Avid Pay Direct. What we do here is we directly deposit the funds into the vendor's bank account. For this method of payment, we charge 1.25% up to the first $25,000. So It maxes out at $312.50. Now, I am acutely aware that there are lots of vendors that are out there that are maybe they're a landscaper that's only been paid for $500 a month by a small condo association, and they don't want to pay that fee for maybe a large ticket item. Let's just say that same condo association has contracted with them for a large project that's like a landscaping improvement project of some sort, and it's $30,000. The vendor can establish a threshold with AvidXchange that says, hey, anything greater than, let's say, $2,000, we would like to receive by check. Anything lower than that, we can receive electronically. And so that way they can avoid the fee for the large ticket items. But this is a very quick way for vendors to get paid. We also transmit remittance details to the vendor, so they'll get an email. And also, when their payment arrives in their bank account, they'll be able to see that it was for Happy Trails Association and for invoice number 4254. And so that's really helpful for them to make sure that the association gets credited properly in their accounting system. Um, this is our first electronic payment method, and then the next one is virtual credit card. Now, this one happens to be the most popular one. And what we do here is we issue a single-use credit card number for the exact amount of the invoice. The vendor is then going to take that credit card number and they are going to process that credit card through either their accounting system or their credit card processing terminal. And we have a lot of people that really like this payment method. Um, we don't charge for this actually, not on the front end. We charge on the back end and we don't directly do the charging. So what happens is their merchant services provider, or their credit card processing service, for those of you that maybe aren't familiar with that term, they charge them typically around 3% for their services for processing that charge. AvidXchange is a stakeholder in the MasterCard network, and we're a licensed money transmitter. Because of that, we receive a portion of that money that's received on the back end by the merchant service provider. And so that's how we make money there. A lot of people like this probably because when we sign them up for AvidPay Direct, if they choose that, we tell them, okay, we're going to charge you 1.25%. And I think that automatically makes them think, well, I don't want to pay that, but they're thinking often that we already take credit cards, and so I'll just do that. But they're not thinking they're also being charged on the back end of it. So I think that that may be one of the reasons that it's more popular. Either way, these are both a great benefit for the vendor just because they're not having to spend time creating deposits to go, a packet of checks to go to the bank, and somebody has to go and deposit, or even if they scan on a mobile app, it doesn't take them that all that time to do it. So very quick ways for them to get paid. Once we pay them, we do ongoing support for those vendors. So let's just say that the vendor decides that they want to be enrolled in one of the electronic payment types. We do the administration for that, so the management company doesn't have to worry about it. And I know that when I used to be in management, we used to have some situations where we would pay people through like CINC ACH. Our team was responsible for doing the administration, and so it was kind of disruptive if they wanted to enroll or they wanted to change bank accounts, that type of thing. The one thing that I like a lot for management companies with using us for these payments is that you're not holding that vendor's bank account data in your records. So that helps relieve you from additional exposure to risk as well. But you're also not being interrupted by people that are interested in enrolling in these payment types. And they also have the ability to use a vendor portal that we have. We call it the supplier portal. They can go in and see the status of their payments there. Also, if they have an electronic payment or a virtual credit card, they can pull it down from that portal. So there's the ability to self-serve. And I know that we all that have been in management know the pain of vendors that are calling constantly or emailing constantly because they want to know if their payment is on the way. And a lot of times, because they don't know the status of their payment, they submit multiple invoices, which results in duplicates. And that's also problematic for management companies. So this helps prevent some of that. Juliana, you can thank you. So, a couple of things that that I like to describe here. We don't just say, "Oh, we're going to make the payment and that's it." So I mentioned earlier that we do the administration for you all when it comes to enrolling any of your vendors in any of these payment modalities. But there is a process that we have in place that enables more electronic adoption. So first of all, if you are not using AvidXchange now, like if you're not using StrongRoom, and you are interested in vendor pay, one of the things that our clients love about us when they onboard is we have around 1.3 million vendors in our network already. So it's very likely that we're paying your vendors that you're using today through other management companies. And so it's likely that those vendors have already indicated to us how do they want to be paid. And so it makes it easier. They're used to it. They know how to work with us. But let's just say that they never have worked with us before. What happens, as I mentioned earlier, by default, they're going to be paid by check the first time. On the day that the check is issued, our supplier team will reach out to the vendor. They're going to do some things to check to make sure that we have the right information on file for the point of contact. We want to make sure that the payment address is correct. Now, that information is going to come over to us from whatever you've put into sync for that vendor already, but we do another verification here. Now, when that happens, we also are going to take time to educate them about the other types of payments that they can have, the electronic types. So, in addition to the check. So, our team is responsible for that. You all don't have to do the selling of changing them to electronic payments if they're interested in doing that. Our team is responsible for that. If if our team can't reach them by 4 p.m. that day, then we are going to go ahead and stick that check in the mail regardless. So we do not hold up any payments to try to enroll someone in an electronic payment modality. I like to make that clear because a lot of there's a lot of discussion that exists sometimes out there about, well, what if they can't get in touch with them? What are they just holding those payments until they can get them to agree to pay electronically? We don't do that. In fact, we do better to get them paid as quickly as possible because we want them to have a good relationship with us and we want to use the electronic payment types as well. So we definitely do not hold on to their funds. And again, we will continue to reach out to those suppliers periodically through the year. Maybe we haven't talked to them, and at some point we will reach out to them to make sure that things are going okay and that they are aware of the other payment types if they're interested.
I just wanted to add a few things to when folks sign up for vendor pay, they're onboarded and assigned a project manager who will walk through the management company through every step related to onboarding. Uh, and you'll have project calls with Avid and with CINC. And part of that is a communication that goes out to your vendors to explain how vendor pay works, right? Because part of that is vendor communication and expectation setting with them on how to get paid and how to improve that. As Jared said, most vendors or a fair number of vendors in this space are already familiar with Avid and vendor pay and probably are already signed up for that. So just wanted
Yeah,
to throw that out there. Go ahead, Jared.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Todd, just because I think that when people think about switching over to use Sync Vendor Pay or even before when we were selling stronger into Sync clients, I think that they think of doing this as like, oh my gosh, this is going to be daunting. And then also, I think a lot of people think that we're just going to turn something on, hand the keys, and say good luck. Um,
Right.
so we don't do that. We do have somebody that's with you. In this case, you get support both from Sync and from Avid. One thing that works really well for this product, I think, is that it's embedded in Sync. It's not like you have to go to another platform. It's not like you're going to have to do some huge implementation. A lot of times when people think about adopting these new services and features, software in general, they're thinking about, oh, it's going to feel like implementation of an accounting system or changing of a bank, which are the probably the two most painful things for management companies. This is, I have this analogy and people laugh about it, but like your accounting system is kind of like the ballroom gown, and this is like the accessory that that makes it better, right? So it's just something we can add. It's not very painful. Implementation's pretty quick. We say it's normally like 30 days. Sometimes it goes faster, sometimes a little bit longer, but most of the time it's very quick, and just a lot of it because all this information is already living in sync, the things that we need in order to get going.
Actually, and that's a perfect segue into talking about it being embedded into Sync and how VendorPay works with our new AI products that are with CPI Plus. So, VendorPay, we have with CPI Plus subscribers, we have AI ingested invoicing. As most current Sync customers know, they can currently email invoices to a dedicated email address, and they are brought into Sync. And then with those who are on CPI Plus, we have AI coded invoicing that makes the ingestion and the indexing, the selecting of the vendors a lot easier or automated, right? So that's where that automation layer comes into play as it relates to VendorPay.
We are really excited about this from an AvidXchange perspective, just because typically, and we've been partners with Sync for a long time, but typically we have sold Avid Strongroom to clients, and which has been a tried and true solution. It's done great, and a lot of our clients love it. But the reality is, you have to use two different platforms. You have to use Sync and you have to use Avid Strongroom, and while the integration is fantastic. Nothing beats a user experience where the client can stay in one system for the entire everything that they do, right? And so we've been excited about this. It doesn't. Most people are like, "Why would you be excited about that?" And so it's because we the payment side is probably the largest piece of it, and so we're happy to do the payment side. The invoice piece is we're glad to do it, and that's how our business started. But we probably focus more on payments, and we do that really just to kind of to help the client get to the payment piece, which is where
Mhm.
we're well versed to assist.
So yeah, let's walk through that typical AP workflow. And this is currently without AI powered vendor pay. So obviously the invoice arrives, and whether that is by mail or email, I know a lot of folks get them by email these days. Um, However that invoice gets to the client, they're able to get it into Sync either through the upload client or emailing it to that dedicated email address that brings it into Sync. Then there's the manual entry, right? There's assigning the vendor and assigning the invoice to the association and then to the respective vendor that's attached, along with the invoice number, the invoice date, the due date, all of those metadata entries that are related to that invoice. And then the next is obviously it's in sync and is ready for whatever approval workflow that you have set, whether that is internal for your management company only, or perhaps it's involving board member approval using web access. So the next step is the manual coding for the GL codes. So whether that be the manager keying in the GL code or loading of recurring invoices, it is typically an extra step that is required there. Next is obviously the whatever approval method you have set up. It would be routed through that. Then you would post it in Sync, which would then kick off whichever payment method you've selected, whether that be a manual check in Sync, a print check, or whether that would be Sync VendorPay using virtual credit card or a check printed by Avid or through Avid Direct, which is the ACH program. And then you would mail the check if it's printed in-house. and then answer all throughout that vendor payment inquiries that they have, like, where's my check, right? So this is the typical workflow that we see today.
Well, how does AI help with that? Our invoicing agent takes a lot of those steps out of your hands. So there's no more manual entry, there's no more manual coding, and you don't have to worry about printing and mailing that check and handling all those vendor payment inquiries. So the way the journey would begin once you are powered with CPI Plus is you would send that invoice straight through our AI-powered email invoicing system that would capture the invoice immediately into sync. And then the AI coding agent will immediately start coding that invoice for you. So all you have to do is approve the invoice once it's coded. Just review it real quick and make sure that everything looks right, and then post it. And if you have CINC VendorPay as your payment method, it takes care of the rest, and you make that payment, and Avid will handle the rest of making sure that that vendor gets paid.
Awesome.
All right. I've been answering a few questions online as Jared and Todd have been talking through the deck. So just so everybody hears what questions have been asked, I'll just kind of review some of those. But before we get into those, there's a few questions that we knew that some people would want to that we felt might be beneficial. Um, One of those questions is, I'm concerned about how Avid moves funds out of our association accounts and into the clearinghouse. How do I know the funds are safe? So, as a registered money service business agent at the federal level and a licensed money transmitter in all the states that have these type of laws, um, it's Avid is required to hold these funds for the association's benefit and has prohibited them from using for anything else other than making that vendor payment. And Jared, I don't know if you want to dive into that more deeply, but from a standpoint of how that works, just wanted to kind of describe it.
No, I think that really, you couldn't really have said it better. Good job. Thanks for doing that.
Perfect. Perfect. Another one is they want to know how do they make how do you make money off of using Sync Vendor Pay? Well, the advantage is this is opening up a new revenue stream opportunity for you, so you will have the opportunity to make money on these vendor pay payments. Um, we only charge by check for vendor pay. It was designed that way, and we can get into specifics with your sync rep of exactly how that works. Um,
High level, or not high level, maybe I'll get a little more granular and say, not everybody understands this, but when I mentioned to you all earlier that, like, for a credit card, there's money that's made on the back end of the transaction, with relationship to the merchant service provider and the vendor. So they're paying a percentage of that payment to the merchant service provider. And because Avid is a part of of the MasterCard network in in a money transmitter, we make money on that. We give a portion of that to Sync. Sync gives a portion of that to you as a management company and one of their clients.
Yeah, and
Perfect.
that, like, just to take one extra note on that, Jared, like that, the vendor negotiates with their own card provider, like what that rate is,
That's
right?
right.
So yeah, it's whoever they're using to process their electronic payments, like all of that is detailed in that agreement they make with their card processor.
That's right. So that could be like Square, Stripe,
Right.
any of those companies are, yeah, they make those agreements with them. And sometimes they have agreements with them by way of the bank that the vendor uses. Sometimes they'll have them as kind of like an ancillary service that they offer. But yeah, that's between them.
Another question was, and Jarrett kind of hinted at this already, was if you're already using Stronger, what's the advantage of using Sync Vendor Pay? Well, it's exactly what Jarrett described. It's the benefit of having everything contained into one platform, so you don't have to log into two. So everything is done through Sync, and we just send the payment directly to Avid, and they take care of the rest. So you don't have to log into another system to do that.
That's one of them, but I'll tell you, there are a couple of other things. For those of you that don't know, I spent like 2 decades in management, And one of the things that I hated doing is like when I had to change the portfolio assignments for all the managers around, I had to go to do it in sync, right? And then, or whatever I was using. And then if you're using StrongRoom, you have to do that too, right? So for that, and it's not hard. Again, we love StrongRoom, but if I was running a management company today, I would want the easiest situation that I could possibly create for myself because the job's already hard as it is. And so if I can live in one place, my managers can live in one place, that's what I want to do. The other thing is that with the Avid Pay model that we use for Sync Vendor Pay, that I mentioned before, if you're using StrongRoom today, we have you on a model that's called Avid Pay for HOA, where we cut the check off of the association's bank account directly. As where with the Sync Vendor Pay product, we use Avid Pay not sorry, Avid Pay, the conventional Avid Pay, where we use the money the clearing account, sorry, to issue the payments instead of cutting them directly off of the bank account. And the reason that we do that is because when we use StrongRoom, there is an automated API, but it only runs at certain times of the day whenever we've scheduled it. And so by having this AP solution in a different system that's outside of your accounting system, it can create some reconciliation issues if we're using the clearing account versus cutting it directly off of the association's bank account when we're on StrongRoom versus doing it through Sync Vendor Pay.
Perfect. Um, got another good question here that I can actually answer this one. There is a question. Is there a stop payment option? Common request that we get, and what I can tell you is how it works today, and how it's actually going to work very soon. So today, how it works is you would reach out to Avid to initiate that stop pay, and then Avid would take it and start that stop pay process. How we're doing it is we're integrating even that step right back into sync. So our teams and the Avid engineering teams are literally hard at work right now creating the solution so it's all integrated into sync. So in the future, all you're going to be able to do is log in, initiate your stop pay directly from sync, and we will take care of the rest.
Well, you made it sound a little bit worse than it is, Brad. So
Yeah.
they can reach out to us like they can create a ticket and reach out to us to do a stop
Yeah,
payment as it is today. But we also give them access, like for their back office team, like maybe one or two people, to the Avid Pay portal, so they can actually do it in Avid Pay themselves. But it'll be much nicer when it's just in sync.
that's right. That's right. And then once it is in sync, that kind of leads to the next question: is how do those funds get reconciled once they're pulled back? Once we have that integration complete, you won't have to create any manual entries to kind of offset those transactions. It'll kind of it will we'll do that for you, so everything will get auto reconciled and matched correctly. All right. I had one question. Jared or Todd, either of you guys can take this one. Do you find that vendors add the cost of the payment type to the HOA invoice?
My answer to this is the people that are most passionate about it, they probably do. They're not necessarily going to tell us about it, and I don't necessarily encourage people to say, or our team to say to our clients, like, "Hey, you should just tell your vendors to charge the association back for that." The truth is, the amount is probably so small that the associations don't notice it or the management companies don't notice it if they do charge it back. Now, I understand that there's some new legislation that just rolled out in Florida where, for any of you guys that are living down there, that now the those fees can be charged and they now put it on the receipt, like or they'll put it on the invoice for something. So that's relatively new. But so that's interesting. I'm going to be watching that to see if we see any of that. But yes, so I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, and I think for most vendors, right, like getting electronic payments, it's much quicker, right? Like they're opting for that convenience, right? Like that to them is more important than getting a check, having to process that check, having to scan it, all of those things related to that payment. So, like, I think most of the time it's like with anything these days with efficiency. If it saves you money in staffing, even from a vendor's perspective, like it's generally worth it.
Mhm.
Right. And I agree 100%. But I'll tell you one thing that I think that is a one of the reasons that people abstain from using our product is that they are worried that their vendors are going to be outraged and for some reason. So there are a couple of things that I
Right.
think are really important to address here. The first thing is that yes, I'm aware there's a vendor or two or three or four that they've got to have their money today, and they will come into your office and they want their check now, and you stop everything that you're doing, you stop the printing press or whatever in the heck is going on in your office to get that for them because they're the only person that matters at that minute. Well, you can still cut a check and sync manually. Like you can still go and you can still do that manually. I have a client that he's like, listen, I want to push all this over into Sync VendorPay, but I do have a handful of like small shop guys that like they need to get their money instantly. And by the way, I'm also very aware of the fact that sometimes vendors come with some of the associations that you sign new con management contracts with, and the board loves that vendor, and they've got to have everything has to be just so. So for those, this particular client, he had them on ACH in Sync. And my advice to him is just leave them there. That's fine. Leave that couple, that one or two, the squeaky ones there. But move everything else out of that and move it over to this vendor pay because it's a lot easier from an administrative perspective.
Right. And there was a question since we're kind of talking about timing of everything. There was a question on the estimated time of completion for payments made specifically on Sync Vendor Pay. Um, Virtual credit card is going to be your fastest way. It's an electronic payment. You're going to get your funds fast, right? If you do it by check, you're still going to be constrained by the same things that you're always constrained with check, which is the mail. So sending by mail is always going to obviously take longer than an electronic payment. All right. I
Agreed.
believe. Yep. Go ahead, Jared.
One
Sorry.
thing I'll just quickly add to that is I've found that when every once in a while people will, some of my clients will say, we've had trouble getting checks to a vendor in X amount of time, right? So I will go back and research. I always ask for specifics because there's a lot of rhetoric that exists around what happens between the time an invoice is received and a payment is received. And there's so many things that can go wrong. They can be stuck in waiting for a board approval, waiting for a manager approval, or waiting for the mailman, whatever it is. And so a lot of times people think that the payment was received slowly because of some of that. So I go and look at the steps, spend a lot of time researching this. One of the things that I have found is that there are certainly certain parts of the country where the mail is slower than others. And that really plays. So if you have people, a lot of people are on check payments and that's all they're going to take, that's something that you consider. I used to work for a company that was based in on the coast in North Carolina, and I live in Charlotte. And where I worked, in Charlotte, the mail was pretty decent. In on the North Carolina coast in Wilmington, horrible. It would take forever for mail to get in and out of there. So that's just one thing that I like to put out there that, just be aware if you've got mail service in certain areas of the country that's not so great, and it's not what it used to be at all for sure, then that's just something to put in the back of your mind too.
Let's do one more question, and then I think we're almost right at time. Jared, this is just one more from you. Where do the physical checks mail from?
It depends on where you are. We have a handful of locations across the country. We have one that's in Jacksonville, Florida. We've got one in Chicago. There's one in Las Vegas, one in Oregon, and also one in Houston.
Perfect.
We typically will put you with the site that's closest to where you are. And if, for example, let's just say that there's a catastrophe, like maybe a tornado or something, not tornado, hurricane or something, and people were not in that location, we will automatically transmit all of your data over to our next closest facility until that facility is back up and running.
All right. Well, I think that gets us right at time. I appreciate it, everybody who's attending. One thing I did want to point out is we do have our Sync Up conference coming up, and with our Sync Up conference, we do have a session specifically on Sync VendorPay, and hosted by Jarrett will be there, and I'm trying to get the details for it. I thought I had it pulled up. I'm sorry, Todd. Do you have it in front of you?
And Alan Cohen.
Yeah. Yep.
And yep. And
If
then that
and
is, go ahead.
yeah, so that's going to be on Friday at Friday, September 5th from 9 to 9:45.
There you go.
Hope to see you
So,
there.
yep. So Alan Cohen, our GM of financial services, and Jarrett will be leading that session. So if we didn't get to your questions, we hope to see you there. We'll be covering a lot of different topics in that class, and then any other questions that you might have, reach out to your sync rep to get more details.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.